Hello, hello, super expanders. How are you? You guys are in for such a treat today. I have such a very, very special human sitting here looking at me on this Zoom screen. And I am so excited to share him because he is like the OG super expander for me. One of the first masterminds I ever was in, and his name is James Patricks. Let me introduce you to James Patrick.
Hey, Corey, how are you?
I am so good and so excited to. We're having like a little bit of a role reversal here. Uh,
That's right.
Not the leader of the mastermind, but you guys, I actually was on James' podcast. So it's super exciting to like flip the script and be able to ask the questions and share him with you. So I'm so grateful you're here with us today. And I always love to open this up with when we like open up the conversation. I'm not asking the what do you do question
hmm
because I've been talking about this a little bit. I'm almost like mildly offended by that question now because I really want to know like who you are in the essence of you. And I know who you are, but I want to share that with the world. So can you just share that with us?
It's so interesting because I've recently been deep diving on myself to try to answer that question. Because had you asked me that a couple weeks ago, I may not have given you an appropriate response. And I think the reason we ask so much of what do you do? I mean, we all the time at networking events or meetups or masterminds. What do you do? As if our identity is exclusively tied to the work that we do. And I think as entrepreneurs, which most of us might be, we might think that on the surface, but that's only given a facet of who we are. And I'm coming out of the back end of what can only be described as this existential crisis of trying to analyze who I was. And I was trying to find this perfect answer to it. I'm like, who am I? What represents me? And I kept getting hung up on the word authentic. I'm like, am I being authentic? I mean, because I have played so many roles throughout. I almost said career throughout my life, from coach to photographer to speaker to podcaster to journalist, and what's the unifying connection? And so I was recently I was working in Palm Springs, and I had some free time to myself without a screaming child in my ear, and so I sat down. I started just to kind of word dump all these adjectives that I thought defined who I was. And once I did that, I had this big page filled with all these words, and I tried to see, is there a connecting thread between them? And the connecting thread that I found was teacher. And if I were to sum up not just the work I do, but who I am and who I want to be, it is that of a teacher.
So now that makes me think, do you think that the impact of that realization has anything to do with the recent arrival of your beautiful, beautiful baby?
100%. Yeah. And I think that's what, there was so much in our world that precipitated pause, created space, whether we wanted it or not, and forced reflection, whether we thought we needed to or not. And as I'm coming out of the tail end of this shift in our entire ecosystem, I have a child, and talk about a whirlwind of emotion, and I'll be blunt with you, just sheer fear of, I hope to everything I do not screw this one thing up. If I do anything, just don't screw this one thing up. Being a father, and that was part of this analysis on myself, is now that I am a father, the roles that I wish to play as a father. And so, yeah, being a new parent for the first time has definitely brought this idea of being a teacher to the forefront of my mind.
Oh, I love that. You know, kind of wish they would give you a rule book when they came out right? Were they supposed to come with a manual? You're like, wait,
Something,
where
right?
is it?
That we spent, I went through so many classes teaching me how to get through the delivery. And delivery, like what is the dad to do? But everything, the coaching, the breathing, the meditations, knowing what the effacement value is, all the lessons I learned until we walked out of the hospital and we had this screaming little cherub in our arms and we're like, now what? And there was no education on now what. Everything taught us to get to that point, and then they're kind of thrown out to the wolves at that point to figure it out.
I love that. And children are our mirrors, babies especially too. Wow. So as you're coming into understanding and grasping that that's really who you are, your essence, you received the most amazing teacher ever, which is a child.
Hmm. I don't know. He's pretty dumb. I hope he doesn't listen to this. I mean, he can't even talk yet. He poops himself all day long.
I mean,
He's not the brightest human being yet. He still has time though. I'll give him a few years to. No, but and I'm obviously, shooting holes and making fun.
Worse.
I've learned so much about myself in the last 3 months of his life. That I never wanted to learn, partially, but also because you learn a lot about limitations and you learn a lot about your triggers and what your barriers are. And I've had to confront a lot of my own childhood now by being a father, that maybe I never imagined I would have to, or I completely forgot that I had to.
Oh my gosh, it's just so, so true. Uh, I'm just like thinking back. I mean, my first intro into this foray was
Mm-hmm.
many, many, many years
So
ago.
you're a pro on this. You got like what, 18 years of a
Oh my
jump
gosh,
start on me on this.
22.
Mm, don't know how that's possible. That's amazing.
I know, I love that. I think we were just like the last time we were on a call, you said something about like maybe I was like 33 or something. And I was like, I have a 22-year-old. That would have made me like, what is my math? Like, I don't know, 16. No, it would have been 16. I would have been way younger than that. I don't even know the math on it, but I would have been very, very small.
No, I'm not judging.
I mean, I took it as a compliment, but
Good.
all right. So I digress. This isn't about me. This is not about me. This is about you really stepping into and like really claiming this place and space as a teacher. So that makes me very curious about the things that you do teach. What is it that lights you up to teach?
I I don't know if it's topical as much as it is seeing the eyes light up when someone gets it. And maybe there is a little bit of specificity, in the topics. I remember the first time I was asked to teach anything, I was in college and I was asked to teach a class how to edit photos because I was already working as a photographer when I was in college. And I had this professor who says, I want you to teach my class on how you edit photos. And I was so terrified to do this that, I mean, and Corey, you've seen me speak on stage in front of 500 people. Um, I was so terrified this first time, I literally hid behind the computer so that the only part they saw of me was like the top of my head above the computer monitor. And I just did my Photoshop demonstration as monotoned as I could and just prayed that no one would say, well, wait, I know a better way, or that doesn't make sense to me. Just terrified of my fellow, because I was in college at the time, just terrified of my fellow students, just making a mockery of me. So it's just interesting that I've been doing this for, as long as I have, just to see that evolution. But, helping someone see a path that to me seems so clear because I have the gift of being a third party, and I'm not, objectivity. I'm not in the thick of it. So like I'm working with you in your trajectory. you're in the thick of it. You're in the present tense. You don't see the bird's eye view until you've learned to see the bird's eye view. But I can, being on the outside looking in, and to help you see those pieces and connect those dots. And then all of a sudden, you get it as if it's been there all along, because it has been there all along. And that's the really cool thing about kind of shedding light into what people are working on. And that's been, I've worked with coaching health and wellness entrepreneurs. I've worked on coaching photographers in the growth of, and artists in the growth of their careers. But it's about just kind of seeing that big picture and then helping them see the next step in front of them.
So it is so magical. So essentially, you really help people collapse time in their life and their business, all the things. So to make sense of when I fast forward and ask you like the question after this, we have to talk a little bit about really what you do. It is an important piece, although it's not necessarily the thing that defines us. So you've had many big accomplishments along the way. So let's give a little snapshot from when you started out as a photographer, a journalist, and then fast forward to what it is exactly you are bringing to the world today.
So there have been a few different job titles that I homogenized later in my career. It started as a writer. I was a journalist, evolved into photojournalism, which evolved into editorial photography. I took a sidestep as I graduated college. I worked in marketing for the better part of a decade. And the connecting piece between all these is they're all telling different types of stories, whether it's a written story, a visual story, or a story or a narrative done through a marketing message. Every one of it is telling a story. And as I really move forward in my career after that, it was about how I craft and share stories, whether it's writing articles for magazines, speaking on stage, coaching someone to tell their own story, creating a visual narrative with an image, or teaching someone how to build the marketing or advertising campaign to share their own narrative. All of it comes back to telling a story and just having different mediums in which to tell those stories. So that's 25 years in 20 seconds.
That's pretty good. You got your whole story in there. I love it. So I want to share one thing is that part of something that I had received from you as a teacher that was a super expander moment that's been something I've carried with me in the work that I do is that you told a story about how you persistently were sending, it was photos, right, to an editor.
Mm-hmm.
And it came full circle because at some point you were on a call or you've received a picture. I can't remember the specific details, but your picture that you had been sending was kind of like in the background, which was proof that all of your efforts had not gone unseen, unheard, even though you hadn't necessarily received word that it was someone was watching, paying attention, and it came full circle for you, which was a moment for me is like, you don't, all of your efforts, they're not for in vain, and you have to keep trying and putting yourself out there. And oftentimes it takes multiple times of doing something even to the same person for them to even see it and hear it. But in addition, that you have to, I mean, there's like a patience that comes along with that. And if you give up after the first time and assume that people aren't paying attention or watching, or that the thing that you're sharing is unimportant, that you will obviously miss out on a lot of opportunities in life. So I walked away from you sharing that story amongst many, many other gems that you have shared with me. But that was one that really, really stuck out with me that I feel like I wanted to share with you and with everyone.
Thank you for remembering that. I think when we think of the word labor in the context of work, we think physical labor. We think how tired we might be by the end of a long work shift. But the labor that we do requires an emotional investment. And I think that part gets overlooked a lot because of how taxing and how depleting the emotional investment of what we do can be. And we talk about it when we're too afraid to do something. We talk about that fear, right? But what about when we actually do the thing and the thing doesn't go as we thought it would? and how we have to sit with ourselves after that and what that feels like and how defeating it can be and how depleting it can be and how exhausting it can be. And the story you mentioned, I was pitching to a magazine and I was sending off postcards of my work every month for, it was like 9 months, and I heard nothing from this magazine. How could we not get in our own head at that point? 9 months of pitching to one client and not a word back, not a single syllable back. And you're going to get in your head to assume, I don't have what it takes. This is not good enough. I need to stay. You'll minimize. I need to stay in my lane. I need to, at the time, this was a big national client I was pitching. Maybe I just need to stick to local. Maybe that's all I can do. Right. And it's so simple to allow ourselves to do that. But the true emotional labor that I think we have to endure is that pain, is that silence, or that even if it's rejection. In this case, it wasn't rejection, it was just silence, but it might as well have been rejection. It was worse than rejection. It's like, I'm not even good enough to get turned down. They just don't want. And I eventually saw a photo of the person from this magazine. They were working at their office and there was something tacked to the wall behind them. And it happened to be one of my postcards. In fact, it was the first postcard I sent them 9 months earlier. So for 9 months, I am destroying myself emotionally, thinking I don't have what it takes because I've not heard a word from this client. But for 9 months, they've had my postcard on their wall. For 9 months, that person saw my work every day they went into the office. But we develop this story within our minds of how we cannot achieve that. And what I'm saying is the real work we do is to overcome that. Because once I was able to see that, then I was like, well, I'm just going to send out a 10th postcard and an 11th and a 12th. And it was shortly thereafter, I was being hired by this client. But thank whoever for showing me that image that I came across, because had I not seen that, I might not have set that 10th. And then they never would have hired me because I just would have been stuck in that identity that I didn't have what it took to get that client.
It's such a great lesson and such a great story. I love to hear you tell it over and over again because it's like it's so powerful and it's so true. And I feel like it's so applicable to today's scenario of like on Instagram, right? We so oftentimes, if you're not getting the like, you're not getting the comment, you don't think anyone is watching, but there are people watching, which is why it's so important to keep showing up and showing up and showing up. And eventually someone is going to respond. Someone is going to buy your thing or acknowledge you for your work. So I feel like that's such a valuable lesson.
Well, it's like, let's take Instagram likes because it's such a perfect example. I mean, we're so pissed off at the algorithm. Oh, my post only got 100 likes. Normally I get 500 likes. This sucks. I'm only getting 20% of the engagement. The fuck? You had 100 people engage with your content. That is 100 people who took even a fraction of a second to say, I'm paying attention to you. You need to honor that. You need to respect that. You need to engage back with that. Those are people who are in your ecosystem who just raised their hand at you and said, hey, I'm still here and I'm paying attention. I liked what you just put out. That right there is a gift and we should honor that.
Oh my, yeah, it's so true too, because so often you see the likes and it's like, but did you go respond to those people? And if you had 1,000 likes, would you actually have the energetic capacity to go respond to all 1,000 of them, which is what the idea is within how the algorithm works and how we're supposed to, or we should be, could be, we have the opportunity to, we get to engage with our audience and really forge relationships. So such a powerful lesson. So you've had your work on the cover of very, very prestigious magazines, ones that are sitting in people's homes right now, for sure, that they have read, they've spent time reading on airplanes and spent time looking at your work. So you've done big, big things and you've worked with big clients, big name clients. And so I'm imagining over the years, you have had some people who've been super expanders for you. And I'd love to hear about that, who they are, who they've been, the stories behind that, who's inspired the greatness in you.
So I think back to when I was in college, I was floundering around a lot of it, not a little bit. And I, the best I can really describe it without being too melodramatic is I was finding my own rock bottom pretty quick. And I didn't really have any aspirations. I didn't have any really motivation or momentum. I was meandering at best. I dropped out of university. I was fooling around in community college, taking whatever seemed slightly curious at the time. And at some point I was like, I just need to graduate. I need to get this together. So I remember I went to my guidance counselor at the community college. I'm like, what do I need to do to graduate community college? And she says, well, you did already. I said, really? She said, yeah, you have 2 degrees. Okay. Now what? She said, well, transfer to the university and get your, because they were associates, get your bachelor's. Okay, I'll go to the university. I'll get my bachelor's. And really, I just want to keep my head down and stay out of trouble. And I ended up my first semester back at university meeting this professor who can only be described as this cantankerous old man. He was kind of hobbled with diabetes and, he was so tenured that they couldn't get rid of him. And everyone took his classes because he was considered to be an easy A for upper division credit. And he ran the photojournalism program at the university. And I took his classes and I ended up signing on to work at a newspaper that he managed. And I signed on as a reporter because I wasn't really a photographer at this point. I had taken a few photos, but nothing of any note. And he saw enough in my work to say, I'm taking you out of the reporter pool and I'm going to put you in the photography pool. I said, all right, fine. Now, this is the first time I really think anyone's ever taken a chance on me like that. And I overlooked it a little bit. My first issue shooting for his newspaper, I shot this image that ended up on the front page of the paper. And I remember at the postmortem, which is something that magazines and newspapers do after an issue comes out, where you kind of dissect the issue and talk about what went well, what could be improved upon in the next issue. At the postmortem, he, as the publisher, he held up the newspaper and he said, page 1 photo, James Patrick, excellent photo, James, excellent photo. I had never gotten any recognition on my photo work before. I wasn't really an investment of mine at the time. The only reason I was really doing it is because it was a paycheck and he asked me to do it. And I just felt, all right, fine, I'll be a photographer. I guess I won't write articles anymore. The very next issue, I went out and shot a photo. It ended up on, I think, page B7. So section B, page 7. Wasn't a good photo. Once again, postmortem comes around. He holds up my photo yet again. I'm like, here we go again. It says B7 photo, James Patrick. It's a terrible photo, James. Terrible photo. That's when I realized it can go both ways. That I have to work to earn the respect. And I could lose that respect. And he became a mentor of mine the rest of the time I was at college. And had it not been for him, I would not be a photographer. I never would have pursued photography. He's the one who he gave me that opportunity. A few issues later, I became the photo editor of that newspaper. Then he helped me become the photo editor at a startup magazine. Right before I graduated college, he called me into his office and he said, I need your resume. I said, what for? He said, doesn't matter. I got this interview at this marketing company where I worked for almost the next decade because he called the person and says, you need to hire this guy. I ended up becoming his paid adjunct professor and teaching his classes for him. So had it not been for him, never would have gone to public speaking, never would have gone to teaching, never would have gone to marketing. And I watched this individual do similar things for so many of his students. And he would provide these career altering just transformation and opportunities. And most of them had no idea. They had no clue that it was their crazy professor who knew everyone, was connected to everything, pulling the strings behind the scenes. Call up his friend who was a photo of the LA Times, says, you need to hire my student. That student gets a job at the LA Times, having no idea, no clue how their portfolio was even found.
Oh my gosh. That gives me chills. What an awesome guy.
Mhm. So that's when I think of super expanders. I mean, everything I do to this day, even how I identify as a teacher. He passed a handful of years ago, um, which was a very difficult event for me because, the number of times you want to, I don't have regrets really, mainly, uh, except maybe this one, because the number of times I sat with him and wanted just to say thank you, but didn't because we would just talk about something else. And, I didn't want to be too melodramatic or any bullshit reason. Um, but after he passed, I would have these reoccurring dreams where he was a character in these dreams. Now, what's so weird about this is the location of these dreams always change. Sometimes we're back in the classroom, sometimes we're at this big conference. Sometimes we're one time we were in like this building rooftop, and I'm sitting in this group of people in the back of the room. I'm always in the back of the room, almost hiding, right? And his voice calls out to me in the back of the room and says, James, get on up here. You need to take over. I've had that dream maybe 7 or 8 times since in the last 3 years since he's passed. And so like, even though, he's not with us anymore, those words, you need to get up here, still echo constantly in my brain. And it's this reminder to me that it's so easy for us to hide behind our work. I mean, a photographer, I'm behind the camera. I'm not in front of the camera. You're a podcaster. You're behind the microphone. You're not in front of the microphone. You're a coach. It's your client's success. It's not what you're doing. And it's a reminder that sometimes we need to turn the thing around on us, put the light on us, put the microphone on us, put the camera on us, whatever it might be, um, and to stop hiding.
Uh, so good. Yeah, he taught you some other lessons too in there because I heard it. It's making sure that you say things to the people like what's on your heart, like expressing really how you feel, your gratitude, your love, your appreciation for people, especially when they're the people who are doing things for us kind of behind the scenes, which we all have an awareness of that, but tend to, especially I think when we're trying to build something, when we're trying to make it about us, our business being about us, when people afford us opportunities, oftentimes we either will think that we like almost like we had them coming, like it's our right to have been
Mm.
given that opportunity when there's a million other people out there that it could have been directed towards. But when someone fosters that for you, to really make sure that you acknowledge them because it's a gift. I mean, they did it as a gift for you, but also receiving the thank you or the appreciation is oftentimes like that's the biggest gift for that person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it is.
So good. I love, love that story. Mm. I'm sure you have like a million other ones that we could sit here and talk about all day, but I know you have a baby to get home to, so I can't hog all of your time.
Just some of it.
Just
You're
some of
allowed.
it.
You're allowed.
Just some of it. I mean, and I owe you a trip out there to babysit because I promised I would do that. So,
I'm still waiting.
you guys,
Yeah.
I'm gonna come and you guys will
Between
have
the
you guys.
hours of 4 and 9 every night, you're in.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll tag you in.
So fast forward, let's just like fast forward out and to a year from now. What is your guiding feeling? What is it that you want to feel at this time next year, 12 months from now? Like what's your North Star?
I was reflecting back on, I've had this log that I set all my goals with. And I've had the same log. It's in the same Excel file. It's now 11 years old. And I just add a new tab to the Excel file for every year that I'm kind of building out my plan for the year. And as I was reflecting back, kind of also going through the aforementioned identity crisis and questioning who am I and what do I do and what value do I give to others, I wanted to look back to see, well, how have I evolved since I started this little uh, tracking journey? And I realized something that was both enlightening and maybe a little alarming at the same time, which is I never really set goals for happiness. That my goals were myopically focused on business or personal development. Uh, I have to lose this amount of weight this year, or I have to write this number of articles that get published this year. I have to shoot this many magazine covers this year, or I have to get this many podcast downloads this year. I have to sell this many passes to my conference this year. I have to get this many mastermind members this year. I have to hit this financial metric this year. And it's very rare I don't achieve my goals, and it's not because I set easy to achieve goals. It's because I can be very aggressive and focused in the achievement of these goals. But what I noticed is I would feel often the same before and after achieving a lot of these goals. So let's take, when I left my corporate job and I launched my photography career, I would say, if I match my income, that's my goal. I did that in 6 months. Okay. I'll double my income. Did that in another 6 months. Double that. Did that the next year. Okay. What if I did something crazy? What if I shot 50 printed magazine covers in a single year? Got 55. Felt the same. And what I realized is that I was setting these goals, and not that they were hollow goals, but that the achievement of the goals cannot and should not and will not ever be tied to fulfillment or happiness. That is instead a choice. And I had not been choosing that. Not that I was choosing depression or anger or anything like that. I was just choosing this constant quest of acclamation and achievement, but never really validating why or what this meant, or what was its place within my journey. So, going back to really this kind of revelation that I'm still in the process of experiencing and kind of downloading, where I want this to go is I want to honor that fulfillment and that happiness in the present, and stop the assumption that it is one more achievement away, because I don't want my son to constantly question where the presence of his father is, because his father's off chasing something that is not going to yield the result he wants. Instead, I want to honor that time to be with him and to enjoy with him and to teach him and to guide him to find what it is that lights him up. So I really think that is the future that I would like to start moving towards.
That's so good. So then that makes me want to ask another question. Have you thought about how it is that you get to in the moments and in the days that, like, what's the question you need to ask yourself on the multiple times a day when you are choosing the things or the time or the actions that you're doing? I feel like there's like I don't know, a series of questions to have in your back pocket to be like, am I choosing happiness? Am I like that? We have to kind of train ourselves so that we don't keep saying that that's what we want in the future.
Mm-hmm. God, that is such a good question. And now that is what I have to ponder, because you're right. We do need some anchor that reminds us why we're making the decision we're making. I can give an example of, the wrong thing. I go home early from work and I bring some work home with me. And my assumption is I'll have some time to dive into it tonight, maybe while he's napping. or, while he's feeding, something like that. I can review this paperwork, and I'm there, and he's upset, or he's not eating, or he's cranky or gassy or whatever. Anyway, I'm not able to get to the work. And I start to put this stress on myself. I'm like, damn it, gotta get this shit done. And this kid's losing his mind. That'd be the wrong example of it, right? Not that we enjoy our kids losing their mind, but the idea that I should have anything else pulling my attention or my energy from just being present with them in that moment, that is the problem right there. And so to have those reminders or those anchors that kind of pull us back into that present, and maybe that is a question that we ask ourselves, like, is this the present that you wanted to be in? Is
Ah,
this the, was this where you wanted to be? Because if the answer is yes, like I wanted to be home, I left work early to be home, why am I allowing my brain to go somewhere else? I
yeah.
don't know.
And funny thing too is I wonder if you notice if this is already in practice that his demeanor and energy changes because babies and children, oh my gosh, they pick up on all of that stuff like you can't believe. And so your mind is like, I got to get to this thing. And the baby's like sensing it and they're like,
Yeah. Good luck, old man. Good luck. Let me work on
don't
a
you
number
know?
2 for you.
Don't you know I run the show?
I'll keep you here all night, old man. That's what he says to me.
With the cutest little face.
Yeah.
Oh,
He's
wow.
like, I could go to sleep. I'm not going to. I'm going to throw a tantrum till 11 o'clock tonight just because, you know what? I didn't like the look you gave me when you changed my last diaper. I know him, the little jackass,
Oh my
but
God.
adorable.
The cutest. Oh my
But
God.
adorable. Yeah, it's funny because he's learned at a very early age. I mean, he's 3 months, but the kid is trying to talk a lot. And I can only assume he thinks he is talking because he just has full on conversations with himself that don't make just a lick of fucking sense. But he just babbles constantly and is so entertaining to watch because I don't know who he's talking to, but maybe himself. And he doesn't care. He just has this conversation with himself, not making a single word, but just kind of a mashup of syllables. And it is delightfully entertaining.
Oh, I can't wait to meet him in person. Oh.
Yes, get out here. I'd love for you to meet him. He's as annoying as I make him sound, he is actually very cuddly and very
Of
sweet.
course he is. I see all your pictures. Oh my gosh. So I love your introspection, the feeling that you're moving towards, working towards, striving for every day. I think it's such a powerful thing. And in all of this, so this whole idea and mission behind this podcast is to help expand other people. And one of the ways I really truly believe is to share the lessons that we have experienced. So if you were going to go back and give yourself, your younger self, one juicy nugget of not inspiration, but intelligence of advice, what would it be?
Probably be to stop hiding. I think that a lot of, very similar to the dreams I talked about. Um, I so much of my own career, despite accolades and awards and all, kind of all that ancillary crap, it's it was still just the work, and I could hide behind even an identity of who I was in the public face. Like, if people went to like the early Fitposiums, the James that was on stage, I don't know how authentic that was to me. Like early podcasts I did, I don't know how authentic that was to me. It was a facet, but it was more a role that I was playing. And I really believe that, the last few years have allowed myself and so many to start to kind of peel back those layers a little bit and feel so much more comfortable displaying who we actually are. And when we do that, I think we create a deeper resonance with the people who need us the most.
Oh, yeah, so true. Right? It's that whole idea of when you show up authentically, you might like alienate some people, but the people who really, really need to hear you, the people who are your people, those they're going to be magnetized in, they're going to listen, they're going to turn the volume up, all the things. So showing up as yourself is so important. And oh my gosh, how much more energy do you have when you're not wasting doing the stuff that isn't really you?
It's a scary thing. Like I'll honor that as someone who's been terrified of it myself. Like, and then also it's kind of like screws with your mind a little bit because you're like, well, how do I know if I'm being authentic? What does that actually mean? And I've yet to actually define it appropriately. But I think it's dropping so much of the facade and the posturing of what we feel we have to do to receive acceptance or to receive external validation. And once we start to strip some of that away, that undefined authenticity starts to peak out a little bit and you start to notice it a little bit more. And then you start to honor it even further.
Yeah, you start cultivating it. So good. I could just sit here and riff with you all day.
Me too. They're fun.
So you have a lot of things that you are working on, a lot, the magazine Icon Refined, you have the podcast studio, so many different hats and businesses. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Where can they find you? What's your preferred way? Should they slide into the DMs, or is like how do you like it?
Yeah, I mean they can, but they might get my assistant. Um, I mean, they can connect with me on Instagram at jpatrickphoto, but I'm really bad at DMs.
Look at that
If
authenticity right there, guys.
Yeah, I hate it because
It's okay.
it's a stress thing. Like, because I'm the type of person who reads a message and I don't respond right away because I have to think of the perfect response. And then like 3 days go by because I don't check my DMs that often. I realize, shit, I didn't respond to that person. And then I beat myself up for another 3 days trying to think of an even better response now. So if they want to get in touch with me, yeah, you can do DMs. I hopefully won't be that bad, but actually they could just text me. I respond to text right away. And my number is 480-605-3254. If you have marketing, sales, business development, publicity questions, I answer them all. It's not something I charge for. It's just a way to stay connected to people.
So good. And I'll make sure that's in the show notes so that they can refer back to it as well.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you.
So it's time to land the plane to let you get home to your beautiful, beautiful baby. So I want to just thank you so, so much for carving out the time to chat today. I know you're have a packed schedule, so I do not take it lightly that you shared our most unrenewable resource. You shared time with me, shared your wisdom. So thank you.
No, the thanks goes the other way. And there's very few things that I would consider to be as replenishing as conversations with you. But they always are. And I know how long you've been really cultivating this inspiration behind this show. And I've said this to you before, this is so long overdue. I'm so proud of you for launching it, and I'm so excited for your audience because your audience deserves to learn from you. They deserve to hear from you, and they deserve to have you as a guide on these journeys as you're sharing all of your guest stories and all their narratives. I think it's such a phenomenal launch that you've created, and just sincerely proud of you and just honored that I could be a part of it.
Oh my gosh, if you guys could see me right now, I'm like bright red. A couple tears are coming right into my eyes for sure, for real. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much for just being the mentor, the friend, the amazing human that you are. Appreciate you. I will catch you on the next episode.